Back to the Past in 10 minutes or less. Today, May 24th, 2050, my colleagues and I will be traveling back in time to the Hellenistic period, an era filled with Greek dominance spreading from the homeland all the way to India and culture diffusing into the eastern world of Asia. Three kingdoms, the Antigonid, Ptolemaic, and Seleucid, each covering its own area with unique characteristics, prevailing all the while working together to create a united region in trade and culture, flourished and thrived. While the Antigonid Empire developed in the Greek homeland, the Ptolemaic Empire covered mainly Egypt and its surrounding areas, which makes sense with the name Ptolemaic and most of the rulers in Egypt being named Ptolemy. Lastly, the Seleucid Empire was the most vast out of the three, stretching from the eastern Mediterranean to Central Asia and India, because while the other two empires had concentrated development, a lot of the Seleucid Empire was wide, undeveloped land. So even though it was ridiculously bigger, the Seleucid Empire was not as developed. Now, you may wonder, how did the Hellenistic kingdom start? Why were they so united? Well, it all started with one man, Alexander the Great, who was born in 356 BC and began conquering in 336 BC, winning every battle he fought in and even defeating the Persian Empire. Unfortunately, he died young at the age of 33, but he left a huge legacy. In fact, not only did he leave behind the vast connected area that was sequentially ruled by the Hellenistic kingdoms, but he changed the names of over 70 towns he visited during his conquest to Alexandria, after himself, in which some became huge trade ports and areas of learning or communication. Because of Alexander the Great's conquerings, the Greek language spread throughout the kingdom, making it an influential language in the years after, and even inspiring words in today's languages. He inspired future leaders such as Napoleon and Julius Caesar and Pompey to be great, or not so great leaders, and shaped their beliefs as well. But enough about him, and more about the Hellenistic kingdoms. To Desmond.
Back in 306 to 168 BCE, the Antagonids were the ruling house of ancient Macedonia. After the death of Alexander, Antigonus I Monothelmus, a general of Alexander the Great, gained control of Asia Minor and founded the Antigonid Empire. Although the Antigonid realm of Greece and Macedon was the smallest of the Hellenistic empires, it benefited tremendously from the new order, brought to the area by Alexander the Great. The Antigonid kings ruled over a fairly culturally exclusive population of Macedonian subjects. This was due to the fact that the Antagonids ruled the traditional Macedonian homeland, and thus was not influenced by Eastern cultures. Since people in society did not have to deal with people of different cultural or religious practices, the Antigonid culture were fairly conservative. In the Antigonid Empire, there was continual tension between the Antigonid rulers and the Greek cities, which sought to retain their independence by forming defensive leagues that strongly resisted Antigonid efforts to control the Greek peninsula. However, the Antigonid kings, just like the Macedonian kings before them, held absolute power over the government. The king was expected to conduct battle in person, especially because loyalty of the army was essential. When the king lost the support of his troops, the power was essentially gone. The military changed very little from the time of Alexander the Great. The military still depended on the phalanx, with their massive pikes and the elite corps of the companion cavalry. Though the Antigonid army was first in the Hellenistic world, it failed against the attack of the Romans. During the Hellenistic era, cities like Athens and Corinth flourished as enormous realms of trade passed through their ports, as well as leading to the empire gathering more wealth and increasing their empire. Although the Antigonid Empire was weaker than the Seleucid Empire and poorer than Egypt, it was the only completely Greek kingdom of the three empires. It was the most unified and the most militarily powerful.
The Ptolemaic Empire lasted from 305 BC to 30 BC and spanned from Syria to Cyrene. This empire began with the rule of Ptolemy I Soter after the death of Alexander the Great in 323 BC. The empire, being in Egypt, adopted many Egyptian customs and traditions. For example, the rulers of the Ptolemaic Empire gained respect from the Egyptians by stating that they were the successors of the pharaohs, which gave them the ultimate divine power. That explains why Ptolemy I Soter declared himself the pharaoh of Egypt and was able to create his own god. But we'll get back to that. The Ptolemaic kings also took the Egyptian custom of marrying their sisters. This was clever because it kept the rule of the kingdom within the power of the family, and women ruled jointly with their spouses. The downside of this was that the Ptolemaic rulers became increasingly weak and feeble, mostly due to incest. To make things even more confusing with the royal family, all the male rulers of the empire took the name Ptolemy, and all princesses or queens took the name Cleopatra, Arsinoe, or Berenice. Although the Ptolemaic kingdom adopted many Egyptian customs, it still held on to its Greek origin. Remember how Ptolemy created his own god? Well, this god was a mix of Greek gods, Zeus, Hades, Asclepius, and Dionysius, and Helios, and 2 Egyptian gods, Apis and Osiris. The wife of Ptolemy II was also depicted as the Greek god Aphrodite. Furthermore, the capital of the Ptolemaic Empire was a major center of Greek culture and trade. It was called Alexandria, after Alexander the Great. During this time, Alexandria was surpassing Athens in being the cultural center of the Hellenic world. It had a varying population of Greeks, Egyptians, and other Oriental peoples. There was also a large minority of Jews that had their own city quarter. Alexandria also contained several 100,000 volumes and housed and employed scholars and poets. Alexandria was overall a cosmopolitan and seaport on the Mediterranean that had flourishing trade and communication.
The Seleucid Empire ruled from 323 BCE to 64 CE. Seleucus I Nicator, who had been the commander of an elite corps of guards in Alexander's army, received Babylonia, and from there he extended his realm to control enormous eastern parts of Alexander's empire. This included modern-day Afghanistan, Iran, and Iraq. Macedonian rulers of the Seleucid dynasty adopted titles such as King of Asia and Great King, and took control of the land that used to be the Achaemenid Empire. Like Alexander, Seleucus and his successors kept the Achaemenid system of administration and taxation, as well as the imperial roads and postal service. The Seleucid state was basically a military organization, exacting tribute. The most important legitimization of kingship was military victory. The heroic prestige of the king was a legacy from pre-Hellenistic Macedonia, associated with the superhuman heroism of Homeric epics. The heroic ethos pushed kings to personally lead armies into battles. The empire had an overall Greco-Macedonian form. It is especially evident when it comes to the Greek symbolism that's on texts, that has to do with coins, and the medium of royal propaganda. Hellenism is also clear in Seleucid court culture. Just like the Persians who controlled the Achaemenid Empire, Greeks and Macedonians dominated upper levels of court and the army. During this time, long-distance trade became especially prominent. Greek migrants facilitated cultural and commercial exchanges by encouraging the mixing of religious faiths, art styles, and philosophy throughout the Persian realms. The establishment of new cities greatly stimulated trade and economic development throughout the Seleucid dynasty and beyond. During the Seleucid dynasty, the Magi began to preserve religious texts and writing. They created the Gathas, which are important texts of Zoroastrianism. All 3 Hellenistic kingdoms were vital states with progressive views on the different culture they embraced. However, the Seleucid Empire was by far the largest one, as you can tell from its size. In Asia, the Seleucid legacy was so strong that it lasted through the Roman, Parthian, and Sassanid dominion until the Arabian invasions of the 7th century introduced Islam. The Seleucids built hundreds of cities and maintained the political structure of the Persian kings. The cities are based on the Greek polis model, and they had gymnasiums, amphitheaters, and squares. The Seleucid Empire was a major center of Hellenistic culture that predominantly maintained Greek customs. It was when the Greek influence reached its greatest extent. The principal channels of this influence were the cities that Alexander founded in the former Persian Empire. The Seleucids became important in India when Chandragupta married Seleucus' daughter in order to form an alliance. The history of the Seleucids can be divided into 4 periods. The first is a period of expansion, which was followed by relative stability. The second was a period of contraction and internal conflict. Next was the revival of the empire, which came under Antiochus III and IV. The last was a gradual decline and the collapse of the Seleucid kingdom.